Welcome everyone to our October Rad Reads AMA. We are approaching the 6-month mark on these AMAs, and this one's going to be a little different. It's not going to be me waxing poetic about some, obscure topic that you may or may not be interested in. In fact, I'm going directly to the experts, and more specifically, this specific AMA came from me just asking our community, what do you want to hear about? And and the question that most people wanted to hear about is, you talk about coaching all the time, how you, Kate, receive, use it, receive it, practice it. You are a coach yourself. And so can you help us demystify what coaching is? So what I thought, staying true to the spirit of Rad Reads, was, well, let's bring the people that have impacted my life. And so it brings me great honor to introduce to the Rad Reads community, Kate Bednarski and Taylor Pearson. So welcome to you both. It's a real privilege to have you.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. It's so great.
And so I thought I would start. This is really time for you guys, the audience. What I thought I would start with is just a brief introduction, me introducing both of our guests, and then I would give them 90 seconds to tell their brief story, and then we'd just dive right into it. And so I start chronologically where I met Kate. Gosh, it was probably early. It was cold in 2014, I believe, maybe late 2013. And I had made up my mind actually that I was going to leave BlackRock, but I went to her and a mile a minute, and we can talk about this. I was kind of amped up on ideas and productivity, and she said to me, she's like, "You're very afraid." And it took me a while to figure out what I was afraid of, but lo and behold, Kate was, like I said, I had made the decision to leave, but leaving corporate job is actually not the hard part. The hard part is surviving. Once you shed the income, the identities, the relationships. And so Kate and I worked together for many years from then, and we continued to be close friends. And so that is how I know Kate. And then Taylor, I've known for a while, but I reached out to Taylor specifically about coaching sometime last year, where I was just professionally stuck as an entrepreneur. I just felt like I was spinning my wheels. I had all these projects that I wanted to do. I had committed to the path of solo entrepreneurship, but I just couldn't advance anything. And so I reached out to Taylor and basically said, "Can you help me get unstuck?" And I'm lost. Specifically, I didn't know how to monetize what I was doing with Rad Reads. So I worked with Taylor, and we continue to be good friends. And I'll just throw it out to the audience. I coach individuals about their relationship with money. You guys have heard me talk a lot about this. This is about our special guests, but feel free to ask as well. So enough intros. Kate, how do you please introduce yourself to our community?
Oh, great. Okay. Well, thanks. And it's great to be here with all of you. And it's great to see you again, Kay. Well, I think, you've contextualized our relationship. I think the first thing I asked you was, how much coffee have you had when you came to my office? But because it was like, whoa. But I soon learned that was your speed at that time. So anyway, but that we digress here. Do you want to know a little bit about how I got into this field? I mean, what do you think?
I would say,
what do your readers want to know?
I would say help us set the stage of maybe a more specific question would be, people come to you like me, and why?
Okay.
Why do they come, and what's the promise?
Okay, here's the deal. So I'm a former corporate executive, started out in the athletic footwear business, footwear and apparel business as a sports scientist and R&D gal, worked my way up through product management, marketing management, brand management, to become then like kind of the upper echelon of executive management of mostly women's brands. Like I ran the global women's business at Nike back a while, and kind of worked my way through my business career as a marketing and brand and general manager executive. So people like my background in the business world. So people like you come. I also had a stop in the financial services world as well, which I learned now was a primer, because I have a lot of financial people from the ex financial people like you that come to me. And then I took 2 big sabbaticals, and while I was in my business career, one was 1 year when I left Nike, and then the one was 2 years, and I got a second master's degree. I have one in biomechanics and one in creation in spirituality, and wrote a book for that now I use in my coaching. So I kind of, when I left I like to say I left, when we leave our careers, it takes leaving our careers to get into our life's work, our calling. And so I'm in my calling now as first a coach, guide, and it continues to unfold. Now I'm also a shamanic healer and medicine woman. So it just keeps layering and layering. So people come to me with that quick background for different reasons, but typically, like you, Kay, my clients come to me when they're either in a major transition, often in their work, like you, like I'm going to leave, or I just left, or help me leave, and they're looking for meaning in their life. So there's usually some major transition in their life around work, and then and there's some stuckness around that. So transition and stuckness, and a lack of meaning.
Okay.
Those kind of are my three ingredients. I do have some clients that I still see are all about just wanting to be the best person and the best leader they can be. So I do have some of those still in my practice, and I love them, and they're great.
Awesome.
That's kind of a minority of my practice now.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Taylor, same question.
Yeah. So my professional background is digital marketing. I worked at a marketing agency as a sort of project manager, and then at an e-commerce startup, and sort of left that company, started doing freelance, basically marketing consulting. And over time, that kind of slowly evolved. I would start working with the company and looking at their marketing, and I would realize, actually the problem is not the marketing, it's somewhere else. And then we would end up working on that. And so that kind of spread initially to sort of like business systems, like people familiar with like SOPs and operating processes, started doing more work with that kind of stuff. And then eventually also to sort of like what I would call like personal productivity systems, GTD, time management, all those sorts of things. And so suddenly I kind of had this little umbrella of different things, and so it sort of evolved from a marketing consulting thing to more of a business coaching thing. And I would say, generally the people that come to me, at least for the last few years, pretty much everyone's come to me through reading something I've wrote or something like that. And I guess the common thing people sort of say to me is, I like the way you think. That there's a certain way that my mind works, and for some small subset of people, that makes sense to them. But then I'm primarily working with founders or executives at very small companies. Under, sometimes as small as 1, but certainly under 25 employees, and working with them across those sort of, those 3 big disciplines.
Awesome. So with that, with those introductions, it always takes a lot to get the audience to ask their first question. I'm going to throw it out. Don't be shy. And I've got plenty of my own questions to ask if people are feeling a little gun shy right now. Going once, going. All right. You missed your window. It will be open many times again. So one question I have for you, for you, Kate, is a question that I get often about transformation coaching, life coaching, if that's the umbrella that you would represent, that you might fall under for some people, and if you disagree, let me know. But the one question I get is often is, I see a therapist. Do I need to see a life coach? What's the difference? Do they work together? Are they overlapping? How do you parse those the differences between those activities?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, I answer that question on my web page, on one of my web pages, because I get a lot too. So coaching and therapeutic counseling are complementary, and they both deal with partnering with someone to talk about your life. Counseling therapy tends to focus on the past and family of origin issues and issues around trauma or anxiety, things that cause anxiety and worry, and kind of with a focus on healing that. Coaching is more focused on now and the future and building off of the healing that occurs in therapy. So that's why I say they're complementary. I'm not trained in psychological counseling. I'm trained as an executive leader, and I'm trained as a interfaith spiritual director, which is basically 2 years in hardcore of learning how to listen and ask really insightful questions to help people unearth what's going on. Many of my clients also see therapists to deal with their past life issue, their prior, their past issues, their family issues. I'm also trained in observing and asking questions to determine whether I think one of my clients' blocks has to do with anxiety or depression, and will refer them to see a therapist. And if there's an issue of budgetary concern, I always recommend my clients see therapists over me, because you really need to clear those issues that have to do with what's causing, the trauma, the re-traumatization, the issues that is in the world of psychological therapy, before you can actually really benefit from coaching.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I got a question in the chat. I would just go ahead, unmute yourself. Thank you for asking. You could unmute yourself if you want. We'd love to see you on video if you want to just use your voice, or you could text the question in the chat and I can ask it on your behalf. So let's see what that question comes up with.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This is Danielle, aka Waldy. I tried to change my name on the screen.
I like Waldy.
It wouldn't let me. That's my nickname. So there you go. Here's a question I'll throw out. So for me, Kate, I'm at a point where, and I guess for all of you actually, where I'm at a point where I could transition my career, and I'm an attorney by training, and would love to just get an understanding of, how you work through that process with someone to figure out, how to get unstuck, so to speak, or to try to find that meaning again.
You want me to go first with that? Waldy, I'll go with that. Yeah. So, it is a little bit of I'm trying to find another word for process, because that word's not working for me anymore, but there's a little bit of a time involved in kind of talking and to you about where the stuckness is. And the way I explain to my clients, or the way it works, the way I've seen it work, I've been doing this almost 10 years now, is it's like an overlapping approach of both spending good time going deep in understanding yourself. So deep knowing of self, like know thyself, right? So I have ways to get you there. And at the same time, exploring what it is that works or does not work about what is working in your life or not working in your life, or flowing in your life or not flowing in your life, about your current work. And then unearthing what's trying to come forth, what's trying to come out. What are your dreams? What are your visions? What are your passions? Because my philosophy is that we should stop with this hard work. We should be hardly working. And that doesn't mean that you sit back and, you're not working all day and you're having your favorite cocktail or something at 3, although that's fun. What I really mean is that if you're hardly working, you're in your passion, and it hardly feels like work. And you look down at, or you look up at the clock and you're like, wow, where did those 8 hours just go? Like, wow, I've just, you're just so passionate about what you're doing. So it's kind of a double approach of getting to know yourself deeply. And that's a whole rich area of exploration. At the same time, understanding what's working and not working in the way you're serving the world. And then magic starts happening from there.
Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question, though. Thanks.
I wanted to, let me open it up. Anyone want to piggyback off of Waldy's question? And I realized that my automated mailer was pointing people to the wrong, segment of people to the wrong dial-in. So we should be getting a few other people coming in as well.
That's where I was, by the way, at the beginning. I was sitting there
You'd
waiting.
think after 5 years, I'd figure out how to send the right Zoom invite to people.
It's all good.
So anyone have any other questions for Kate or Taylor? Unmute yourself, chat with me directly.
Yeah, I'll chime in for a bit.
What's up, Brian?
How's it going? So I guess my big question, kind of piggybacking off of that, you talked a little bit about kind of the beginning of the process. And I guess this is almost a question for all three of you guys. I'm curious, with your coaching, like how much process and systems, like how structured is it versus like how is it kind of like customized to different individuals?
I'll let Taylor hop on with that one first, and then we'll go Kate and then myself.
Yeah, I guess mine has evolved to become more structured over time. So I typically break everything down into, I call them like 90-day sprints, but basically like 3-month chunks. And over that, 3-month period, we set some definitive outcome that they're trying to work towards. And then everything's sort of geared around that and moving in that direction. And then I have, I guess the other parts that are structured for me, I have some sort of diagnostic tools that I use that there's like a little bit of standardization. I guess, the range of those diagnostic tools is like very broad. It's basically like a 200-line Excel spreadsheet. And so sort of depending on what comes up in terms of that diagnostic, depends sort of like what the scope of the work is. So most engagements look fairly different from other engagements for me.
Kate?
Yeah. So my work started out very kind of process oriented, and I have my own process, which is my 5 stepping stones process. Know, still, release, believe, leap. And it was designed to help people find their true self and their right work. And it's not a linear process. It's all and. But the know part, the know stone, is the first deep knowing of self, transpersonal knowing of self. And I used to, when I first started coaching, have coaching plans and written this and that, and that's all out the window now. I'm much more fluid with it, and I'm much more accustomed to my client and listening into what's showing up. That said, that process is kind of wired into me, so I go to it a lot, and I use some of the kind of exercises that I developed. This all came from the book I wrote for my master's degree in spirituality. So the process is back there. I just don't rely on it. It's not process forward for me anymore. It's person forward or group forward, and much more intuitive. And so, I tend to find a flow with each client. But some of the stuff I do is very similar for client to client based on my toolkit, if you will, but much more intuitive now and not so planny, or planned, I should say.
And I chime in on my own. My own process is very, like Kate said, so much about coaching. That so much I find about coaching is just asking the right questions. And being a good listener and kind of removing yourself from the equation. And so I really, to the point that, and I think one thing that I really focus on is not giving people direct advice, and asking them the questions to help them uncover the path that leads them to their own conclusions. And for someone who likes to talk and who likes to be prescriptive, that can actually be a challenge for myself. But then, like, what I've realized is that in my work, which is specifically around the relationship with money, there's a few common themes that always emerge, like what's enough financial security, scarcity mindset, what if I lose it all? Which, by the way, these are questions that Kate helped me answer for myself. What is why is it important to be relevant? Why do I care so much what people think about me? Like they kind of always get distilled down to some unique, some similar veins, and then then I have, my own, in my head, there are modules to kind of diagnose that a bit further.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks for the question.
Any other questions? I apologize to some of you with the wrong dial-ins, but for those of you who just showed up, my deepest apologies. But we have Kate Bednarski and Taylor Pearson, and they are basically, Kate is transition, self-discovery, self-awareness, transformation. Taylor, systems, productivity, business, entrepreneurship. So it's kind of floor is yours for any micro coaching questions or you might have, and you can unmute yourself to ask a question, or you can send them to me via chat. It's up to you.
Did you guys decide, or did you guys discuss already how to find a coach? I don't want to overlap things that I missed.
No, that's actually
to me, I think that's like, look, I feel like everyone can use a coach. I sort of have a general policy on that, but I think finding the right coach feels important, and finding the right fit. And I can see a lot of like feelings hurt along the way where you're just like, hey, you're not for me. So that whole process is just like, how do you even go about starting?
Kay, do you want to take that one, or?
All right. I mean, I'll go for it. I'll start quickly. For me, coaching has been every single coach of mine has been either through, actually, no, I take that back. I would say, I've worked with 3 coaches so far. I'm about to work with a 4th. Two have been through very strong word of mouth, personal recommendations, and 2 have been through following them on the internet and learning about how they think, and then just proactively reaching out to them. And so
how did you follow them on the internet? So like even that, right? Like, was it like find a, are there blogs? Like what's the,
I think that
specific, but
I think it's like, what's your lead? Like, how do you find content in general? And so for me, I guess it would be Twitter in that regards, as like, that's kind of my opening salvo to most of the content that I consume comes from Twitter. I'd say a close second is just email and newsletters, and just, I probably subscribe to, 50-ish email newsletters. So and then following for a while what they write, how they think. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the internet, is that you have kind of the letter of record, the ledger of record of, how people think. So much of internet, thought leadership is very personal. Even someone like Ben Thompson, who wrote recently about his struggles with, like, dealing with this whole Hong Kong, China thing, because, he lives in Taiwan, and he's he loves the East, but he also like represents much more of a business view of the West, and he just kind of struggled out loud with it. And so you see that through people who are good writers, people who I respect as writers, and I've reached out to them. I would say in my coaching practice, I'd say half of the clients have been word of mouth, and half have just, they've watched me process these things in my own writing. And whenever someone comes to me as a potential client, I immediately open them up to 5 or 6 other coaches and say, look, I have one approach. I'm one person. Please talk to these other people. Some of them take me up on it and go somewhere else. But oftentimes it's like, I actually want to work with you because I've watched your method. So that's kind of that's how I've seen it, on both sides of the coin.
I think I'll just add that I think that one of the biggest things is personal connection. And it's Christopher, right, who asked the question? Is it Christopher?
Chris. Yeah, Chris. Yeah, I don't know why it says that, Christopher.
Very formal.
I guess in case I get in trouble with my mom while I'm on this.
That's good.
That's right. I hear you. Chris, so, the personal connection is super important. You just have to feel it. And I'll add from like the coaching perspective, I don't take every client that comes to me. I have to make sure that on my end, it's a good fit too. Cause, I'm not everyone's cup of tea either. I would say I'm different than Kay in that I don't have a big social profile. I don't have a big internet presence. In fact, I just finished a 6-month digital nomad traveling the country in my camper van. I traveled 13,500 plus miles in 26 states in 6 months. And a lot of stuff came up for me on that journey. And one of them that was really big was that I needed to get off of Facebook, Instagram, or not Instagram. I'm on Instagram. It's the only one. Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And boy, the freedom I felt when I deleted those accounts was like, I'm getting off on a tangent, was really immeasurable. But for me and the kind of work I do, which is highly intuitive and I need to be a very clear channel, those were distractions. And I'm not called to use those as platforms, but there are other platforms I am being called to. So my practice, I've built completely on word of mouth, and I haven't built it. It's built itself based on word of mouth. And then people, do we connect or not? Or do I offer you what you're looking for? If you came to me, we would look for that connection and whether I had the right kind of feel, I'm the right kind of coach for you and what you're looking for at this time in your life. So that's my 2 cents.
Taylor, you do have a internet presence.
Well, kind of, sort of, but not very intentional. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to build. Hi, this is Pollock. Thank you, Kay and Kate and all. I just want to build on the last question because I'm at a point where I would like to work with a coach. I have actually found coaches through exactly what you all just said, which is really just word of mouth, asking others who have had good experiences to recommend the people they've worked with. And I'm in the midst, and I've actually also found someone who, I saw an article that they had written and it resonated, her style and approach kind of resonated, reached out to her cold and, was able to then talk to her. So I, agree with sort of your recommendations and they have worked for me. So I'm now at the point where I'm having these conversations with coaches and really trying to determine who I fit with. I've had coaches in the past, mostly through, either professional organizations that I've been a part of, or we used to have kind of a coach in residence at one of the companies I worked at who just sort of worked with all the senior leaders at the company. And I've never really quite felt that, anyone's really been a great fit. And so as I now embark on this process of paying for a coach, at a time where I decided to kind of, leave my job and, kind of a mid-career, doing a mid-career pivot. And so the financial piece is, weighing on me of it's quite expensive to have a coach and then sort of weighing that with, well, who's a good fit? It's kind of hard. I'm curious in what would you recommend looking for, beyond just personal fit and connection, because that's really how I've been evaluating these coaches to date. And, I think the biggest thing for me is in assessing, how do you create goals with your coach? Because at the end, there's this expectation when you're paying for services, there's some clear outcome at the end of it. And it's kind of hard to know, what is a reasonable outcome that one can expect, or is that fair to a coach to say like, okay, well, at the end of 8 sessions or 5 sessions, we should be able to have done X? Or is that not how, should I not be thinking about the process that way? So I'm asking like 3 or 4 questions.
I was going to say,
jump in.
Yeah, I was going to be kind of my follow-up to what Kate was saying and Chris's questions may be applicable here. I guess the coaches I've worked with, often, I guess the people that I found that I fit the best with, where I would go ask someone who had done whatever the particular thing I was trying to get coaching on had done, someone that had done that successfully, and just ask them sort of who they had worked with and what they thought about it and the whole process. So I guess that was sort of my, if they had been able to create this outcome with a number of other people that I felt like, were sufficiently similar to me or relatively similar to me, I felt like a pretty high degree of confidence that working with them could do the same. And then just, anecdotally, people I work with are generally, it's unusual, though it happens, that someone, just signs up and reads my newsletter and, starts working with me. Like more frequent is they're somehow involved in sort of my social sphere. We have a number of mutual friends in common, and, they hear from other people like, oh, Taylor's good at this thing. And so have some sort of confidence that like, oh, well, these 5 different people have said Taylor's good at this thing, like he must be good at this thing.
Yeah, the references they've certainly been helpful. And if you have any other thoughts of like other general, if there are even criteria, or is it really just about that fit and confidence and, the particular thing that a coach may specialize in?
Well, one of the things that I like my clients to do is experience my work before they sign up for the work, or whatever you want to call it, like commit to the work, the partnering. So, at least a session at no charge where we go in, like we start coaching. It's not just a phone call. It's an experience. And I think putting yourself in the experience can be very helpful when you're making that discernment about who do I want to partner with, for this part of my journey, my life journey. So that's one thing. And, there needs to be, I don't know how else to put this, like part of it's a feeling. And Pollock, it sounds like you've experienced that before, where you felt connection with a coach, but then for whatever reason, it didn't meet your expectations. But I think it's clear at the beginning of a partnership to get very clear with my clients on, and I have ways of doing this when we agree to work together, partner for a while, to get very clear on what it is you want. What are the 3 things you want from your relationship with this person that's going to be very intimately involved, connected to you in your life. And so there's that. And then there's, for me, I have questions kind of on what I would call my intake that allow me to see if you're aligned in a way that would be complementary, you'd be satisfied by the way I work. Those are just kind of things I've developed over time that help me know whether I'm the right coach for you. So it's kind of like it's an agreement. Like you feel, wow, I liked that experience. Plus we're aligned on what I want to accomplish. Plus I think she gets me. Plus I say, I think this would be a good partnership. So it's kind of aligning.
That's very helpful. That's
Okay,
helpful.
good.
And what I'm hearing is kind of having that conversation really about those goals up front, and, having, and being on the same page about that.
Yeah, I was going to add, I do maybe a similar thing. I try to do like a 3-month thing. Like in 3 months, if we achieve X, Y, and Z, like, is that going to be, is that worth it for you? And then we can have like an honest conversation about like, can I help you actually do X, Y, and Z? I think that helps set expectations, and I think it's helpful for accountability on both sides. People holding me accountable or me holding them accountable.
And Palak, sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right. I think it depends too, right? I mean, like the 4th coach that I might hire might be very specific, like with a KPI that's like almost like tied to revenue, right? Whereas with Kate and my other coach Andrew, it's almost like there's a part of it that's like a practice or a ritual of going to the gym, where with Andrew, he just starts off, he's like, so how you been? Right. And then 99% of the time I just like launch on some tangent of something that's been consuming me, where again, it usually lands in like one of 4 or 5 recurring themes, but the entryway was like something I read on the internet that got me so inflamed. And so I'd say, and I see this in my own coaching practice, there's some people that want to just have that ongoing kind of like know that there's someone to talk to, and then there's other that are like, I have this problematic relationship with money that's blocking me from doing X. Can you help unblock me? And I'd say that becomes a personal preference too. Obviously, one that can be motivated by cost.
And some of those are blind spots too, Kay. Like a client might not know that, well, they're coming to you, they will, because you specialize in relationship with money coaching, but some people don't know that. And inevitably, every client of mine has that come up in some way or another. Their relationships in general, but relationships to money specifically. But it's a blind spot. They don't come to me and say, I want to work on my relationship with money. We discover it. It's part of the discovery. Lots is unturned just in the very first session with me.
Any other questions?
Hey guys, it's Waldy.
Welcome back, Waldy.
Thank you. I have a follow-up on what you guys were just saying. How much of the coaching, because you guys would obviously have a relationship with, me, the client, let's say, and if I'm, coming to either Taylor or Kate, maybe not so much you, Kate, but, if I've got a problem at work and I'm trying to figure out how to work through it, whether it's to get a promotion or change, teams, departments, whatever you want to call it, without knowing the personalities that are in that organization, is that a roadblock from the coaching perspective, or, is the coaching really more so to help, me, the person, figure out how to navigate those relationships or persons based on what I'm sharing with you guys?
So just to clarify, you think more like sort of the internal, I don't know if politics is the right word, but the relationships going on in the company, that's like a big thing. And obviously like navigating that is going to be super dependent on those people's personalities and a bunch of extraneous factors and all that.
Yeah, some of that. Like if I was going, I wanted to angle for this, like I said before, I'm an attorney. If I, wanted to suddenly be the VP of finance, how do I, what are some steps on how to get there and things of that nature? Is it just, because obviously, if Palak, if I'm saying your name right, was saying, there was a coach in-house for an organization, like they would know the people and the personalities and can say, well, if you want to go work for, John Smith, the CFO then in finance, here's what you got to do to show and impress and blah, 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 because they know that personality. But I guess it's maybe going back to some of the earlier conversations about process and flow and that kind of stuff. And how much is really dependent on your specific surroundings, and I guess maybe more the general principles of coaching.
My guess, I typically work with smaller companies. And so usually that sort of thing is less of an issue because there's just at 5 people, there's just like not that much sort of like political stuff that can go on. I guess the thing I was thinking while you were just speaking was, everyone I talk with, they always think like their particular problem is unique to them. And like, this is a very specific thing. And I think, one of the themes of this conversation is, but like, usually it comes down, there's like 4 or 5 things that like, everyone's got these sort of same general things that they have to deal with in their own way. So my guess would be if you found someone that had dealt with a similar environment, like law practices similar to your practice, that they would be well equipped to deal with those dynamics. Even not, there's archetypes, I think, like these types of people, and if they don't know that exact person, they probably know someone similar and sort of what the dynamics are there. But that would be my guess.
I would second that. What Taylor said. I support plenty of people in corporate hierarchical situations, and it's not necessary to know the other person when you're supporting. I'm supporting my client. I'm supporting you. And so it's more like, how are you interacting with so and so and so and so and so and so? You can explain the personality profiles of those people, but it's basically that's not a limiting factor. I can just say, and also something to build on something Taylor said is it's best to find a coach that has big company experience. Like, I know what that's like. I've worked at Walmart, as a top executive. I've walked, a Fortune 2 company. I've also worked at Nike, but I've also worked at small companies. So you want to find a coach that understands the environment, but doesn't necessarily know the people involved. It can actually be helpful not to know the people involved.
Got it.
And I would add one. There's a Young quote that says, "Until we make the subconscious conscious, we'll let it direct our lives and just call it fate." I think that with coaching, what you find is that so much of it is internal, right? Like the stories you tell yourself, the insecurities that you have that get manifested into the relationships that you have with other people, the unanswered questions that you have about your own life that are kind of thrusting you in a direction that you feel uncomfortable with. It's amazing how like a few simple questions like what does success mean to you can actually be like, oh my God, like I've been working for 15 years and I actually never thought about that question other than a lot of money as the answer. And it's amazing how like one question can quickly like pull the rug like from under your feet. And good coaches know how to get to those questions effectively.
Great, thank you.
Next question. Anyone?
I have another one.
Fire away, Brian.
So this is probably transitioning it a little bit, but I'm kind of curious about like your experiences getting into coaching. And I guess I'll give you a little bit of my background. So I've been doing some kind of like more, I guess, like tactical education stuff and some like, I'm a designer. So I've like helped other designers in kind of like a mentorship role, or like I have a couple courses and things like that. But I am kind of curious into transitioning it into something that is a little more like structured. And I don't necessarily know if coaching is the right word for that, but I'm curious of kind of like making that transition. So I'm wondering about like your own experiences getting started, and then kind of like what you would say to someone getting started today.
Taylor?
Yeah, just to give me a bit more background, you say you do design stuff, you have some courses, you do sort of like freelance design stuff, but you'd like to move it more towards a coaching-y thing, maybe with some like design emphasis. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I maybe was somewhat similar in that, I started with kind of a marketing emphasis. Most of my first clients, and still a lot of clients come to me for sort of like marketing, specific stuff. How do I build an email funnel, and what should my conversion rates be, and that kind of stuff. And I guess I wasn't super. It was not a planned thing that I was like, oh, I'm going to do more. I still kind of call mine consulting / coaching because I feel like I straddle the line a bit. But yeah, it was I guess in my sense it was just like very organic that we would just be working on marketing related things, and it would just become clear to me that the actual problem was like not the conversion rates on their email funnel. It was something a little bit more intangible, and then we'd start to work on that a little bit, and they would find that helpful, and so it sort of started to straddle that, and then the referrals from those people became less about like, oh, this is just sort of purely marketing, but it's also so yeah, I wasn't super deliberate. I guess to the extent I was deliberate, it was just sort of broaching those conversations, even if they were probably a little bit outside of my purview as sort of like strictly a marketing person.
And I'll just jump in. I think that this might a typical coach might not say this so emphatically, but I think that there is a huge demand for people to be listened to. Like people want, and I don't mean in like feeling heard in that sense, but if you think about it, how often do people riff about the things that they're afraid of, their blockers, their insecurities? How often are you in a room with someone who's a phenomenal listener and who asks good questions? It's a pretty rare, at least in my experience, and I meet a lot of people, it's a very rare skill. You know who those people are as soon as you meet them. And so speaking about myself, as a very accidental coach where it all came from inbound, but what I realized was that I really am passionate about listening to people and probing, right? And doing so in a way that is compassionate, but also very direct, and kind of and so coaching kind of aligned from the types of human interactions that that I enjoyed having, which also arose from like the context from which I came from, right? I was a Wall Street guy, so people find that, like a group of people find that relatable. Another group probably find it very unrelatable. And I was a career transitioner, so people found that part relatable. But I think that the way I got into it was just having similar versions of, being that person in the social group that people came to ask questions, which then got, amplified by me writing about it, was my own personal path into coaching.
Yeah, and for me, literally my corporate career fizzled, and I was incredibly bored and disengaged with it. If I had to do one more aspect of brand marketing leadership, I was going to poke my eyes out. I mean, I just couldn't anymore. I was really, really bored. And at the same time, I was paying attention to my dreams, and I was having dreams of seeing myself sitting in an office talking one-on-one to people, which I was curious about. And I just kept being curious about it. And also the last corporate executive position I had was I was heading up marketing operations for Walmart. And at that company, when you're an executive there, you are required to have at least 2 mentees in the company. And I had 10 and a waiting list. And that was the work that gave me life. That was the work that made me feel alive. Whereas the stuff on marketing ops and marketing and brand strategy and stuff was literally took life from me. I felt low doing that work. And, so I went towards the light, and I was reluctant to even call myself a coach, because back then I had a judgment around coaches. So you have to watch what you judge, because then you can, become one of these people. And I started getting clients. They just started coming. So I like Kay, literally fell into it, and love it. I mean, it's been a beautiful kind of unfolding from there.
I would second Kay's point about, I think a lot of it too is my writing evolved in that way. It's like, actually, you don't have like an email funnel problem. You have you haven't dealt with your, what you really want to do about this business problem. And people read that and go, oh, actually, yeah, that's right. Like that is, now that you've pointed that out, like that is in fact the problem. So I think that was part of it as well.
All right, awesome. Well, yeah, that's super helpful, because I've definitely kind of found like with my email list, like I had like just like free one-on-one conversations with people, and that was like so much more exciting than like any of the kind of like outbound, right, like writing and stuff like that. And it sounds like you guys kind of fell into it through like something similar almost.
Yeah, pay attention to those things, Brian. Pay attention to what lights you up, because there's calling in that,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we got 9 more minutes. I know that we got more takers for, your questions are all great. I had a list of them and that I was going to ask, and yours are better than mine. So good job. Anyone else have any questions for Taylor, Kate, or?
I have one more quick question for Kate. I hear words like light and journey. Is it just accidental that it's hero's journey sounding, or is that?
It's not accidental. I'm a big fan of Jungian, and I'm a big fan of the hero's journey and heroine's journey, and I do use that language a lot. It's a big influence into my kind of what's in me, what makes me, what's in my heart, what's in my head, what's in my spirit. But it's just part of my parlance now. So it's not specific to hero's journey work, but I love that work. So
Okay, got it.
You'll hear a lot of Joseph Campbell come out of me.
Great.
Yeah. I channel these dudes sometimes, I can't help myself.
All good.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
Anyone else?
I guess I'll jump in since Pollock again. And you may have covered this in the beginning, so apologies, but I'm finding that with the coaches I'm speaking to, most of them will have, kind of a specialty, if you will, kind of like a thing that they feel they're really good at. And they're all very different. And I'm just wondering if there are sort of general classifications, like when you talk about there are life coaches and there are, career coaches, and within career coaching, there's, flavors within that. Do you find that coaches tend to kind of divide along certain known classifications or specialties, or is it really just, like super individual and it really just varies per person, or the kind of general classifications that you would say?
It's a damn good question.
That is a good question.
Yeah, I could go off on that one, but I have a thought on that, and then but does somebody else want to? Taylor, do you or Kate want to take it first?
Take it away, Kate.
Yeah. So the product brand manager in me comes up and is like, why do we have to, as human beings, have to like over categorize so much? It's like, here's a category of, a helping profession, coaching or service coaching, and let's divide it up into all these little pie parts and let's try to be very specific. That said, just like in the medical field, there's specialties, and for me, I love how Kay describes my work. I like to hear other people describe my work because I find it difficult. I think I cover a lot of territory and I can go lots of places. I mean, I have a company where I would be, I guess, somebody said earlier, the resident coach. I'm the resident coach. I coach the CEO and all of his directs. I have 7 clients there now. And there's times I go in there and I'm talking to the CEO about something going on with his wife and his kids, which is very delicate territory. And then the next session, I'm whiteboarding something with him, a new strategy. I can go there because I had 25 years in the business world, and the later parts of that and I'm a brand strategist. I had my own branding agency for a while. So I can wear that hat and I can seamlessly go there. If what I'm feeling is there's confusion about a strategy, go for it. I can help somebody whiteboard something very easily. Now, somebody might say I'm a business coach then, but then what's the stuff talking, about the kids, the kids and the wife, or the fear about the next capital raise or whatever. And we're talking about issues of value and self-worth. So, I mean, does that mean that someone like me is a business coach / life coach / and then I can do shamanic healing. So then what does that make me, so then the brander means like, how do I position myself? What do I call myself? So I try to stay away from the classifications, but there are people who specialize in business coaching and are very good at it. And I don't love that work. So I don't usually take that business. If somebody needs a marketing plan or a business plan for their their new venture, I'd refer them to Taylor. I mean, that's not my passion. That's not my joy. I really like to focus on holding people through transformative life phases and helping them I love to see people self-discovery, like their true selves blossoming and then aligning their life path to that. Like, that's just like magic for me. And I can hold people through that. So, I don't know where that falls in, but yes, there's categories, there's career coaches that really help people with their careers. I think it's both and, it's not either or. And, I don't know if that helped. I just riffed. That's my feelings.
And I would just add that, like, I would presume that the people on this call, work is such a part of your identity and your life that you can't just like cleave it off and say like, let's just talk about this tactical thing that we call work and not touch your life in general. You know, like we are, it's so much, there's such a deep integration, right? It's like not, I like the phrase, it's not like work-life balance, it's work-life harmony. And so I would say that I do think that there are very specific coaches on, conflict resolution, but even then you get into some of your own questions of self-worth, speech storytelling, like those things could be a little bit more specific. But when it comes to things like work, I think work and life they're so blurry, which is why I think, I've accidentally stumbled into money coaching, because money is a lens to talk about like status, identity, death, work, entrepreneurship, risk-taking, personal finances, buying a home, the values you have with your kid, your relationship with your wife. Like, it's just like the gateway to like 10 different types of conversations. And I would imagine that with Taylor and Kate, that can be the case for that is the case for their work as well.
Makes sense.
So I have one. Oh, we're gonna do one more question, and then wrap. So mic open to anyone who has. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, it's me again.
Go for it.
But I don't want to.
No. Go for it.
Do it.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the money question, which is literally the money question, because the coaches I've spoken to, I mean, there's such a wide range, I think, of fees and fee structures, and even navigating that has been, it's just a very wide range. So again, it's another factor in like evaluating that, and I'm gonna guess that's just the way it is in the field. But if there's any sort of advice on that, that'd be great.
It's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess usually the way I route those conversations is, I'll have we'll do similar to, I think Kate mentioned, like basically an existing session. And as part of that, we'll sort of work out what success would look like. And then, what that, is that something I can do, or is it something I can help with that I have some demonstrable track record in? And then like, is it worth it to them at that point for those sort of fees? So, for example, I guess for me, it's like, people will come to me that are very early stages in their business. And usually, that conversation is like, hey, this sounds really cool, and I'm excited for you. Like, I don't think it makes sense at this stage for you to pay me. Like, it's just going to be, I think you'll get a lot more out of it once you have some traction. It's a lot easier to justify. So I guess, yeah, my approach is trying to clarify what exactly it is you're looking for, and then assigning some reasonable value, what you're willing to pay for that.
I'll build on what Taylor said too, is that the whole fee thing there is a whole range. And, the first thing I just want to say about this part of it and this experience of work, like individual one-on-one coaching is a premium experience, right? I'm going to use brand language now, right? So it's I also offer group things. And in 2020, I'm going to be doing, because I want people to be able to experience the deep knowing of self-work at a lower cost. So I'm going to be introducing a program next year on Zoom. But for now, like with the individual coaching, the most premium experience of intimate one-on-one coaching, I have a range of clients, and I always say, this is an investment in yourself. So how much do you value yourself? And that always opens the door to the whole conversation about self-worth. I have a range of clients, and so I have a range of fees. Every time I try to standardize my fee, I just can't. I mean, I either have to I don't like turning people away just because of money. But I do have a bottom. Like there's a certain amount that I don't feel comfortable going under because I don't feel like I'm valuing myself and my time. But I have a very high rate that I can charge because I have companies paying for my services that, can afford and pay coaches anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 an hour. So, but my individual clients can't afford that. And so I don't charge that. So I have developed a range. Sometimes the low end of my range is not affordable to people. And, on occasion, I'm not able to work with people because it's just too much of that's very, very rare. Too much of a jump. I can give numbers, but I don't know if we need to. Kay, I was going to ask you about that. Like, do we want to give numbers or do we want to just?
I would say if people are interested in reaching out to any of the coaches, that I think that's a much better forum.
I agree.
To have those conversations. I would just add, and then again, please don't take this as a coach promoting coaching, but the numbers can be jarring at first, especially if you're not used to paying for them. I mean, if you're in the world of paying for personal trainers and so on, like it's probably going to be higher anyway. But as I reflect, so I've spent probably like $40,000-$50,000 on coaching out of pocket in the past 4 or 5 years. And I have said that I will, if I can afford it, I will have one or more coaches for the rest of my life because I don't know what life's going to throw at me. And if anything, just having that objective person who's, compassionate, but also firm. It's almost like the quiet parent that kind of just like looks at you and says, "Really?" Is of immeasurable worth to me. And I could talk about things like, I could say like the work that I've done with Kate and Taylor exceeds. If you were to try to quantify the joy, inner stillness, and just like contentment in my life that arose from my work to them is worth multiples of what I've paid them, and and the impact it's had on my marriage and on my kids and so on. And so when you and again, this is coming from lots and lots and lots of coaching, but I would say just open the possibility that the ROI, while may not be measurable in like numerically, in terms of like the type of life and the type of like the way you want to show up in the world, and it can be extremely it can be like the best. I think it's the best investment you can make in yourself.
I fully agree. Thank you.
So
and I wanted to add, thank you, Kay, for that. I wanted to add to Halak that the more experienced the coach tends to be a little bit more of a premium cost. You can find coaching services for a lot less with newer coaches, but it really just depends on all those things we talked about earlier about what you're looking for in a coach. What are your what are your criteria, if you will? And so there have been studies done on in the business world on executive coaching of ROIs of 7x plus. So you can. I think that it's fair to say, and it's not just is the person more productive they're measuring. It's is the person more engaged? Are they? Do they seem to be? Are their mood states improved? All of that. So I think you can apply that to life to your life too. And I don't even know how you would measure an ROI on an investment in your own life, but that let's say it's at least a 7 or 10x.
Well, with that, I want to thank you. Special thanks to Taylor and Kate. I want to thank all of you rad readers who can, for showing up, for your great questions. I apologize for the dial-up snafu. One day I'll get this all figured out properly. And really, I'll send a replay around. Really quickly, Taylor and Kate, where can people go to find out more about you and if they want to reach out? Taylor?
Yeah, I'm. My website is my name, Taylor, Taylor, Pearson, Pearson.me, and then there's you can click on a little link that just says coaching consulting, and there's an inquiry form.
And Kate, since you're
Yeah.
not on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn.
I've taken myself off of everything but Instagram. Yes, thank you. Mine is Kate. Mine is 5steppingstones.com. The number 5steppingstones.com. And there's a say hello button under my about. On the global nav, there's an about, and there's a say hello button, and that's the best way to like send me an email, and I'll keep you up to date on stuff I'm rolling out next year and what I'm up to there.
Awesome. And thank you. Like I said, you both of you have had an immeasurable impact on my life, and thus by extension, my family's life, and by extension, the Rad Reads community. So thank you both for taking the time out of your days to spend an hour with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Nice. It was a great time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Great questions. Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.